Hello, everybody. I'm back in your lives after a long hiatus, another long hiatus. Actually, I can't really remember how long it was, but it felt like a little while. I actually started this build a while ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And I did a little post to the story, to, what is it? What would you call it? Like just to the account. I did a post saying like coming this week, and that was last week. And I didn't get the chance, unfortunately, to upload the video then, but never mind. I'm here now. It's all good. So thank you for your patience. I've been squirreling away on this, basically, just getting it done, and really enjoying it because this is not like anything I've done before, actually. I've been sticking to the kind of blocky concrete style, a few kind of 1960s builds, that kind of thing. But here I am doing something very classical, very sort of old school, bit of a period property kind of thing. And what you're watching me build and what we'll be building today is a London Mews. So if you've never heard of that before, what a Mews is essentially you would have these kind of grand Georgian, Edwardian, Victorian houses, particularly in London. And behind them, you'd find essentially a row of stables, I believe they started life as. They were made for, the staff of the very wealthy people that lived in these houses. They would leave the horses there. They leave the horse and carriages there, whatever it is. I don't know. Like, think Bridgerton. It's all that kind of vibe. And yeah, these houses obviously had to be right next to the main houses. Oh, hang on, the game. Oh, sorry. I thought everything had broken then, but it was just me pausing and I forgot to remove this bit of me saving. So enjoy that. Anyway, these Mews houses, what are they? They're stables at the back of big grand houses, and they were for obviously horses. But in modern times, when there really are very, very rarely would somebody have horses. In fact, is there any house with a kind of functioning Mews still? I doubt it, because they've all basically been converted into these gorgeous little houses. And I actually think they're so nice. Like, well, unpopular opinion. Sorry, but does anyone else think like Mews houses are really nice? Yeah, obviously a lot of people do. These are some of the most desirable houses basically ever. And I think a lot of people would probably opt to live in a Mews house versus one of these ginormous townhouses, partially because of the cost, because it's just ridiculous. Like, a lot of these big houses that you're seeing me build at the moment at the front are, they've been split up into flats just because it's so, it's such a big house to run. Sorry, I didn't realize how much lagging there was, and I've not edited it out, so just listen to me and ignore what you're seeing. Basically, yeah, massive regal houses. You'd have a whole large family there and many staff. And then, as well as that, the staff would also maybe live in the Mews house along with the horses, whatever it may be. But nowadays, who's got a family that big to sort of justify having a mansion of this size? And bearing in mind, this was the time when people would have many staff, many kind of people working for them. But that's obviously not really the way our society is anymore. Not so much. It's kind of moved away from that. So, as I say, a lot of them are chopped up into flats. But if you lived in a Mews house these days, they're pretty regular size, to be honest. They're probably a bit on the smaller side, but they still have that kind of Victorian charm that you found in the sort of main larger house. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And what you're seeing me build right now is basically, I'm not putting an apartment in these. I'm not putting anything. There's no livable space in here. There is going to be some kind of like amenities so that the Sims living in the Mews houses can have, something to do. I like to do that in my buildings. Like, if you've seen me build like a block of apartments, I like to include some common areas and like maybe a gym or blah, 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 that kind of thing. So there will be some utility to these rooms. But the actual apartments you're seeing me move on to now, and they're going to be down at this little alleyway. And that's what you would typically find. You'd find the main kind of street, and then tucked down the back, down a little alleyway, is where the Mews house would be, or the Mews houses, rather. So, yeah, those ones there, they're kind of just for show. But then I thought later on, well, I could kind of put a few bits and bobs in there just to make it, give them some utility. So at this point, I'm thinking, how do I connect this front section, which has foundation, into the Mews section, which I didn't want to have foundation because obviously they started life as stables. You can't have like, well, I guess horses can gallop over the up the steps, but that's obviously not what they wanted. And if you've got like a horse and carriage, it needs to be able to, just wheel out. So I had to try and connect it. And there is a way to do this. And I really was being like quite reluctant to just Google how to do this. I thought, no, come on, you know this. But I didn't quite get it right. So I don't know why I was being so stubborn, but I really, I got to this point, but I don't know why I couldn't figure this out. I'm looking at it now thinking what was going on. But I kind of had a slight compromise that they're kind of connected, but then there's like a hole at the top. I don't know. It's a bit weird, but I just sort of did what I could and hid the quirky bits of wallpaper where the brick went all weird. There you can see it kind of connects on the ground floor, but not on the second floor. So I don't know. Just, yeah, it's not a big deal. Just ignore that. But yeah, so we've got four little Mews houses. And as I said, they're really they're really like charming and like twee, to be honest. I don't know why everybody who lives in a Mews house decided they were just going to be the most like cutesy people in the whole city, but they pretty much always have multicolored houses, kind of different cute brick styles, lots of plants, lots of sort of cute little bits and bobs outside, probably because they're just such expensive bits of property that, the people that live there, they can afford, they can afford to do these cute little things with them and really spend a lot of time and money and all that kind of thing. And yeah, so basically I've built these before, not on this channel and not when I was doing videos, but just for my own kind of entertainment. I did something similar to this. And I was trying to not completely replicate that because I don't think that's a good thing to do. Like, for example, if you are playing a game and it crashes or like, yeah, let's say you're playing The Sims, it crashes, and then you want to go back and sort of redo what you did. Like, why is it so hard to do that? I feel like you're not sort of, you've not got the creativity going. You've not got the kind of like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. You're just really trying to remember what you already did. And that's quite dry, isn't it? Like, that's not that fun to do. So I wasn't trying to do that. I wasn't trying to just completely copy paste from what I did before. And actually, I did have a quick glance at some screenshots I took of the ones I did before when these were done. And it's quite different, actually, a lot of the choices I made. So I managed to not just do that whole copy paste thing. But obviously, in speaking of copy and pasting, the floor plans are broadly the same. They're kind of similar. I didn't do too much variety house to house, which I think is pretty normal. But there are a few variants, like some of them are clearly a bit more modernized. Other ones are a bit more how maybe they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, perhaps. So I like to keep a bit of variety. And if you've seen my video where I did the terraced UK street, then I really like building that old school style and like a variety of old, new, whatever it may be. And then I did that one recently, the like industrial lofts. So I feel like I'm really getting like loads of different styles. I'm getting it done. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm burning through styles at this point. So maybe the time's going to come where I'm going to need to say like, hey, like let me know your ideas because I'm running out of them. But no, the time hasn't come yet. I'm working on another video already. So yeah, you kind of go in these, it ebbs and flows, doesn't it, with The Sims? And I think that's why I actually have a lot of respect for like Sims creators. And I'm not really including myself in that, even though I do create videos for The Sims, like, people who are doing this full time, because you know what it's like. Even if you work in a job that's like your absolute dream, you still get to work some days and you don't want to do it. And the more I've done these videos, I've thought like, I really enjoy doing them. But then there are times when I think, oh God, maybe I should be filming a bit more. Maybe I should do a video. And I touched on this in my last, I think in my last video, and some really nice people commented just to say, look, don't do this out of like obligation. Don't feel like you need to be obliged to do it. This should be fun. It should be something you want to do. And they're absolutely right. This isn't my job. But back to my point about my sympathy for Sims creators is like for them, it is their job. And can you imagine? Like, I bet that gets really full on, actually. Like on the one hand, yeah, like what an amazing thing to be able to do full time as your job, and I'm sure they love it. And obviously, it's better than some job they really don't like or really doing something that makes them uncomfortable or that is just grueling or whatever. But you know, doing something like playing The Sims, obviously it's meant to be for recreation, for fun, to unwind, whatever. So I do wonder sometimes if it's a bit like, don't know, it gets a little bit tricky sometimes for them, and it's like, oh, I want to play The Sims because I like it, and obviously that's the reason I got into it. But then, yeah, maybe they feel kind of a little bit stressed sometimes about having to do a video. I don't know. Anyway, I'm off topic. Here we are. We're in the first Mews house now. The first one, sort of, when you walk through the little archway, first on the right. Pretty standard style, nothing too out there. It's kind of not overly modern, just sort of that like 2000s vibe maybe, which obviously this game, it really, really works for this yeah, 2000 to 2000 kind of maybe six style. Although the game came out later than that, didn't it? This game came out, I think it came out in 2004, and it was still knocking about until like, gosh, maybe like 2009, 2010. But when you think of like how long The Sims 4's been going, that's crazy, isn't it? Like that. I'm sure that came out in like 2015, 14 maybe, and like it's knocking on 10 years. So yeah, they're absolutely like milking The Sims 4 dry. Not to say they're not kind of improving it, I guess. Like some of the new expansion packs do look really good, but yeah, that's unusual for The Sims for The Sims 4 to have been kept, for them to keep updating it and keep making packs for it like all this time, rather than moving on to Sims 5, which is just a little observation. Anyway, again, I've gone off topic. I think, yeah, so here we are. We're going through the different houses, just throwing down some swatches to try and get a bit of a vibe. I find this really useful because, even though when I start actually furnishing each of these rooms, I'll more than likely change some of the wallpapers and floors and that kind of thing to match a like certain piece of furniture or whatever. But still, it's quite helpful to have some just throw down a load of wallpapers and flooring, I find, at least. It helps it feel more complete, because sometimes, especially when you're doing quite big builds like this, you can just stare at them for ages and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. Like, where do I start? Where do I finish? What should I do now? And, if you're anything like me, it's quite hard to do everything in order. Like, I'll jump from bit to bit to bit to bit. Like, I think after this point, I just started randomly doing like some outdoor bits because I just wasn't feeling doing wallpaper anymore. Or maybe I don't, I can't remember. Here you go. Look, I'm randomly furnishing now. So there you go. You never know what you're going to get. But anyway, yeah, this is okay. Yeah, so I'm moving it around. Sometimes when I'm doing these, I find that I'm like staring at what I'm doing and trying to like narrate it and basically describe what I'm doing. And other times I'll sort of be gazing into the distance, like, when you're just talking without thinking. And then I'll realize I'm just staring at my wall and not even like focusing on what's happening in the video. So yeah, I don't know which one's actually worse to do, but why not? Why not both? Get you a YouTuber that can do both. And yeah, so here we are. I'll actually lock into the video for a second. I kind of got a bit of a vibe that maybe a painter lives here, and I think that fits the narrative because these Mews houses, somebody please correct me if they know, if they know better or if I'm wrong or whatever. But I think a lot of these stopped being Mews houses and started being actual, dwellings that people lived in, probably around like 70s, 80s. I think that was really the time that you see people kind of moving into the city, like artists. London had really suffered, for example, like in the war, London really suffered, obviously. And then it took a while to start getting things back and rebuilt. And I actually know it was much more recently than the 70s that London really sort of went on the explosion in terms of property prices, etc., that we're seeing now. So, for a while it was not so unaffordable to live here, like relatively speaking, nothing like what it is today. So yeah, these kind of like cute little houses, all this kind of thing, they were really attractive for artists, for creatives. So I think you do get quite artistic communities surrounding Mews streets. And actually, maybe that speaks to my point of before when I was saying like, why is it they've got really like colourful exteriors, or they've got really nice like plants and artisty little spaces all around them. Maybe that's why. So yeah, and I don't know if the video, I can't remember watching me do this, but I maybe was staring at the wall at this point, but I added on some wall to the background to add tiny little yards out the back of each one. I've never been in one of these houses. It might not surprise you to hear because these are in some of the most like exclusive areas, basically. So, I've walked past Mews houses. I've seen them, when I'm doing my weekly Rightmove Zoopla stalk. Sometimes I'm kind of looking at them, and I don't recall them ever really having gardens like out the back of the house, because they would probably be attached to like the main house. So I don't know, but I did give them a little yard, and like some of them, well, actually all of them have this first floor little terrace area. But then, so a lot of the time you'll see like a staircase coming out the front of these, like probably that house just on the left now with the black staircase. That's very common for a Mews house. You really see a lot of that style, that wrought iron kind of vibe. So I thought I'd do that on a couple of them, but then at the same time, like, I don't know, it means that bit of like terrace is not technically their apartment in a way. It's sort of their, like, I think any visitor could just walk up there because it's not through the apartment door, if that makes sense. So I don't know. Like on those ones at the end, the pink and the blue one, I did that access from the inside, so it would kind of be private. But it felt a bit more like they'd be the more modern ones. As you can see, we've got like a glass railing on that one, so clearly they've modernized, and yeah, they've said, no, you can't walk up our staircase from the street, and they've done the like private access. So yeah, it's quite, I think it's coming together quite nicely. Here you can see I'm going into that kind of main house, and you'd have to imagine that this is like the main kind of mansion or a row of these kind of like tall, sometimes they're like 7 stories, these massive townhouses. And as I said at the start, I was thinking, should I just leave these as like blacked out shells? And then I thought, I could put something in there. So we'll get onto that shortly. But while I do this, seeing as I'm sort of running out of things to talk about, as I often am in these videos, what can I tell you? What have I been up to while I've been neglecting this YouTube channel? Well, the weather has been gorgeous, hasn't it? I don't know if it's been like this where you live, but very, very nice weather here. So, I've been living life out in the sunshine, which I think is the right thing to do. I'm not one of these people who feels guilty about staying in when it's sunny, or like, you hear that sometimes, people being like, oh, it's a nice day, like we've got to get out. And I do agree with that. It is a shame to waste a nice day, but if my idea of a nice day at any given time is like just sitting down, chilling, playing The Sims, watching TV, whatever you need, at the end of your week or whatever, yeah, I try not to feel any guilt about that. So I think you should do the same. But I think that's a good way to be. It's good to seize the day, but like anything, it's balance, isn't it? It's good to get out. It's good to also, protect your peace and all that jazz, as people say. So yeah, so good to have the balance. But yeah, anyway, so it's been sunny. I've been out and about enjoying it now and then. I was in Italy, which was really nice. Went on a little trip just for a long weekend, so that was very lovely. Although actually it was quite, don't get me wrong, it was still lovely, not complaining, but I I left the country on like the hottest day, and the weather was actually warmer here in the UK than it was in Italy, which is probably fine, because even though I've never done a like face cam on this before, maybe I will one day, I don't know, maybe I will. I'm a bit shy, but maybe I will one day. I'm very pale, so I'm not very well. I'm not like dangerously pale, but I'm pretty pale. I've got that complexion, so in the sun, I definitely need the SPF on. So it wasn't a big deal for me to go away and it not be like 40 degrees. It's not probably my idea of a amazing trip to be out in like scorching weather, baking in the sun, high UV and all that jazz. Like, I'm quite happy doing something where, this time of year around Easter, when it's a bit milder, that's actually a good time of year for me for travel. So yeah, that was, it was fine for me that it was about the same temperature or a bit cooler in Italy. I didn't mind too much. But in terms of the build, you're watching me now do a bit of furnishing. I'm actually not including every single clip of me furnishing every single one, just because it was starting to really drain my laptop a little bit. I think maybe with all the different Mews houses and that first sort of bit on the street, the taller buildings, and I don't know, like I went quite detailed with a lot of the furnishing. It's starting to test my laptop a little bit, you know. I need a better rig, to be honest. I really need to get an upgrade done, but it costs money, you know. These are the cost of living crisis and all that. I'm trying to decide what to spend my money on, and maybe a little upgrade would be good because my laptop manages and it is a gaming laptop, but I've probably had it like 5 years now, which is really not that long, but you know, it's annoying in the world of like technology these days. It kind of is. They're always wanting you to like keep upgrading, or maybe I could like upgrade the laptop. Does anyone know anything about like if anyone's a bit more like tuned into this kind of thing, hardware and IT, that kind of thing? I know obviously with desktop builds, with the tower, often no problem to do upgrades, but with a laptop, I think it is probably possible, but maybe a little bit more limited. I don't know. Somebody let me know if that's your forte. But yeah, to my point before, I'm not including every single clip, and you know it helps keep the video length down a tad. Which you know I think it's one of them. And sometimes you want to put on a nice long video, sometimes you just want to do something a bit quicker. But I think like around the length these videos have been is probably like the sweet spot. So yeah, it just made sense, and it meant that I could actually crack on and get this build finished, because obviously if it keeps crashing, it's never going to be done, and then who wants that, you know? But anyway, you just saw me furnish the main bedroom of the first Mews that we're decorating. A little bit kind of mature, sophisticated style with the darker woods and the red. I actually do something similar with the kind of house next door that matches this vibe quite well also. But you know, it's still relatively contemporary, not too old school in the furnishings, that kind of thing. But compared to the bedroom we're doing now, you can see the bedroom we did just beforehand had slightly darker vibes, and yeah, to me that always just makes it look like, I don't know, maybe like an older couple of people might live there. In my head, like older people like darker colors. Is that right? I don't know. I think maybe. Let's go with that. Let's go with it. But versus this room where obviously the lighter woods, I think it's a little bit more modern. Maybe a teen is here. You know, this is the thing with these Mews houses. They're pretty much all 2 bedrooms. I think a couple have, well, at least one has like a very small bedroom, like a little like kids room slotted in. When we get to it, I'll talk about it. It's actually funny because it gives me major flashbacks to like when I was a young child, if I was going to go visit my grandma or something. And I remember she had like 2 decent sized bedrooms and this one room that was just hilariously small. And obviously when you're like 5 years old, it's not really a big deal, but you know, I really don't know if it could even legally be called a bedroom. Like, it literally was like a bed and then like the equivalent size of another single bed in terms of floor space next to the single bed, if that makes any sense. It's pretty much exactly what I get onto doing in the next Mews, I think it is. So you'll see it when it pops up and I'll call it out. Yeah. But I guess these kind of houses, at least when they were originally renovated, like they weren't that spacious because like there's not all that much room. They were literally just stables with like somewhere for someone to sleep above. But especially some of the modern ones, and again, when I've been on, you know, Rightmove looking at property, they are actually often now really like massive. I don't know where they've got the space from. Well, what they do is they like extend down into the basement, like sometimes 2 times. So you have double basements sometimes, and then often then up into the attic as well. So by the time you're done, like they're quite big houses. There's definitely some of these knocking about that have full on like pools in the basement with gyms and spas and all that kind of thing. Honestly, if you've never looked up like a London Mews house, go and check it out while you're watching this or after this video. Like, they're amazing. It's crazy what people have done with them. It's very cool to see. It's good and bad because, yeah, they're amazing, but it's sickening, the cost of them. It's absolutely sickening when you think about what they started life as. But, you know, this is the thing. They're in really often like very expensive, desirable areas because these massive houses, if you're going to have like a whole separate basically the size of like a small house just for your horses, it's going to be a nice area. You know, it's not going to be in some random place. It's going to be in somewhere where them kind of people are living. So it makes sense maybe that they would end up like this. But yeah, if you've never checked them out, do go check them out. It's worth a little look. But that's why we've ended up with these houses that obviously I've not put basements in these because they're not built on foundation, so we're not able to do that. But I've kind of kept them just at that kind of like 2-bedroom level. They're not huge, but I find that when you're playing in an apartment, which is what these will appear as in the game, it's you probably don't want like a whole mansion, and probably it would be quite demanding on the game to like render all these houses next to each other. Probably this is even enough. Like the amount on this lot is probably even enough. So yeah, it's they're just 2-ish bedrooms, which I think is decent for what like the for what kind of people would be playing, and yeah, I think it's decent enough. But anyway, as I said earlier, this is the well, I don't know if I did say this, but this is the last of the Mews houses that I recorded myself filming in full, just because, like I said, it was getting really demanding on the laptop. So the next 2 Mews, you're not going to see me like building and furnishing every single part of them, but obviously I do recap them in the end. And I guess I can talk a bit about what's coming up elsewhere in this build while I do this, because there's a few surprises which I didn't know myself if I was going to do at the start of this, and that is the kind of facade of the main street, which was going to be just that. It was going to be just a facade, blacked out, like you couldn't obviously get into it, and it was going to just be there as kind of like stage dressing, basically. And I thought, well, you know, this is usable space that could be quite nice. So I decided that it would be. It was going to be kind of like a members club kind of vibe was what I was going for. And I'm kind of thinking, should I go into detail now or wait till you can see it? Because oh, wait. Hold that thought. This is the small bedroom, the famous small bedroom I was talking about earlier, which, yeah. Also, I feel like another staple of one of these rooms was like a shelf dangerously close to your face, or like right where you're going to potentially hit your head. That was always a staple in one of these tiny little box rooms. But now we're flashing forward. This is what I was filming or building off camera, just to give you a little flavour of what I've been doing. So those are, you don't really get to see it for long, but yeah, 2 of the other Mews houses were built. One of them was, I went a bit kind of like industrial modern style, and the last one, I mean, to be fully honest with you, I was getting a bit like dry for ideas. I was really starting to think like this lot is killing me. It's really, my laptop's running so slowly. And I just kind of went with kind of like a ragtag, a bit like pink and cutesy, but kind of needed a little bit of TLC, because that was the vibe I wanted to do for that last one, because I was running out of ideas. But here we are now in the members club. So this is a bit fancy. I've never done this before. I'll usually do like some amenities in an apartment block, but this would be like this could have been like a community lot on its own, to be honest. So yeah, if you thought that this lot was already high CPU usage, or I don't know the lingo, you know, if you thought it was going to be demanding on a computer already, like now it definitely is, because here we've got like a little lobby area, then there's kind of like a bit like a lounge bar, and then the first thing you saw me build in the space was a games room, kind of like a poker table kind of thing, using quite luxury materials, you know, the parquet flooring and the paneling, all that kind of glamorous vibe, which I thought was beautiful. And then upstairs you've got a gym. Now in this game I'm usually building gyms and kind of just cramming everything in that I can into the space, but this one really was spaced out, and that's what you'd get, I think, if you were in a, you know, if you're in a luxury kind of members club, gym, spa, and that's exactly the vibe I wanted to go for. So hopefully I nailed that. You know, plenty of seating and tables, plants, you know, not everything just crowded in. And then I extended this room even then a little bit more and put in like a bit more of a like weights room. And yeah, you can see there's plenty of room for the residents of the Mews to go and get hench, you know. And then if it wasn't luxury enough, it's a sauna. You know, if my house came with access to this, I would be very, very happy. And the thinking behind this is, I want the people that live here, the Sims that live here, to be able to go and, you know, have fun, fulfill their kind of need bar or whatever, build their skills for their job or whatever it may be, and not have to like constantly go out to community lots, because it's really boring to do that in The Sims 2, and it's obviously loading screens, blah blah blah, all that kind of thing. So yeah, as I was building this, it kind of just kept going. Like, it started off just being the kind of lounge and the games room, and then I thought, okay, maybe I'll put a gym upstairs. But because I didn't want it to be too crowded, it just grew and grew across the top level of this like stage dressing that I'd put in. So we've got kind of like a spin studio. That was the idea. I mean, it's only 4 bikes, but there's no point me building one with like 30 bikes. This isn't pure gym or whatever. It's just meant to be enough for the Sims that would be there, and I think that is. So you've got like a little spinning like bike studio, and then I did a massage room, just one room over. And yeah, there it is. And a bit of a rogue choice, but I put a red light in there, and I hope that's not giving like brothel. But I was thinking it was giving like red light therapy. I don't know. I don't spend much time in spas, so I can't really attest to the inside interior decor of them. But I just thought I'd make it feel quite like classy. And then here we've just got some nice little bathrooms, access to that terrace, which meant I had to undo that room that we're looking at now, which I thought was quite nice for like a hallway, which is basically what it was. So we're getting towards the end of this build now. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you very much. This has been a bit of a long video. I think this is the longest video I've ever made, and definitely the biggest build I've ever done on this channel. But if you've stayed watching, if you're still here, thank you so much. Please do give the video a like, it really helps. And if you want to comment, definitely do as well. Which house would you live in? Let me know. Also, please do subscribe if you want to make sure you see my next video. There'll be one coming out soon-ish. I don't want to commit too much given my track record, but, be patient with me. The next one will hopefully be worth the wait. I will leave you here, and there'll be cinematics coming up shortly. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.